Hi guys, this is Michael from Bird Channel, and today we're going to talk about AP Bio Unit 3, Chapter 3, the photosynthesis of photosynthesis. Let's dive in. So, as you guys know, photosynthesis is what plants do to get organic molecules for their survival. What they produce is that they produce carbohydrates that we usually call as glucose, and they also produce oxygen, which is critical for other organisms in Earth to live. This formula is the basic formula of photosynthesis, where carbon dioxide and 6 water is synthesized into 1 carbohydrate and 6 oxygen. So, about the little details of photosynthesis, in ocean, unicellular phytoplanktons and other multicellular algae go through photosynthesis to produce oxygen inside the ocean, which makes the fish to breathe or other ocean organisms to survive. And these kind of photosynthetic organisms adapted to tolerate a wide range of environmental conditions, and that's the reason why they started to develop to make organic molecules by themselves. So let's go a little bit deeper about photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is anabolic and redox reaction. This part is not really needed. And what they mean by anabolic is that they are producing a macromolecule, which is a carbohydrate. And before we dive into photosynthesis, there's some kind of concepts that we gotta be sure about. And there's also additional information that you guys have to know, and that is when oxidation happens, if there's a hydrogen atom is getting lost, and during reduction, the molecule gains the hydrogen atom. Oxidation and reduction always occur together, since if one molecule loses its electron or energy, other molecules should absorb the electron and energy and become a macromolecule or other molecules that can function. So when we look at the formula of photosynthesis, carbon is reduced into carbohydrates and water is oxidated to oxygen. And being more specific about the H2O, the H2O splits into hydrogen and oxygen, and hydrogen flows into the glucose, and oxygen flows into the gas. In photosynthesis, there are two big types of reaction. The first one will be the light-dependent reaction, and the second one will be the light-independent reaction. For light-dependent reaction, it splits H2O and it produces ATP. For light-independent reaction, it uses ATP. The hydrogen ions fix carbon dioxide, and they produce glucose finally. This is the simple step that photosynthesis happens, and we're going to be more specific about this in the next page. So let's start with the light-dependent reaction. So light-dependent reaction is named light-dependent since they need light for the reaction to happen. So what they basically do is that they capture energy from the sunlight, and then they make ATP from ADP and phosphate, and then they reduce NADP plus to NADPH. And when I say reduce, as I said in the front, they gain electron and they gain hydrogen ion. So the first step of light-dependent reaction is chlorophyll and photosystem 2 absorbing the light, and this absorption of light causes the energy level in chlorophyll to go up, and this is called photoactivation. So if you look at the picture, the light comes in and it photoactivates the photosystem 2. The second step of light-dependent reaction is the photoactivated electron being passed along the membrane by electron carriers. And also simultaneously, energy from photoactivated electrons are used to pump protons, which we call as hydrogen ion inside the cell. Inside the chloroplast. So if you look at the blue part, the H2O donates the electron to the photosystem, and it splits into two H plus ion and one oxygen. And in the other number 2, the hydrogen ion is pumped inside the thylakoid to create a concentration gradient. And these accumulated H plus ions move to stroma after ATP synthesis and they're moving because of high H plus concentration gradient. So what I mean by that is, as I said in the second step, there are many hydrogen ions that are produced, and there's also hydrogen atoms that are entering inside the thylakoid. And these kind of hydrogen atoms are gathered up and they create a concentration gradient, which causes them to go through ATP synthase and create ATP from ADP. And the final step of light-dependent reaction is the electron in photosystem 1 is being activated by the light. And they are received by something called ferredoxin. And in this place, NADP plus is reduced with H plus ion, and they are carried to light-independent reaction, which is the next step. And this procedure keeps the high H plus concentration. Now the second step of photosynthesis is light-independent reaction. Light-independent reaction is often referred as carbon fixation reaction, and this is the step for creating glucose at the end of photosynthesis. So to create glucose, there are two things that are needed. And the first thing will be the energy, which is the ATP from light-dependent reaction, and the second thing will be reduction potential, which is created by NADPH from photosystem 1. This is a little bit later stuff, but the glucose will be stored as starch, and they will be used for growth and respiration. And in respiration, they will be used for carbon dioxide, ATP, and NADPH. This is also the stuff that's gonna come later. So in light-independent reaction, there is something called Calvin cycle, which is the biochemical pathway and occurs in the stroma. In Calvin cycle, they use the ATP and NADPH as an energy source for themselves, and they turn carbon dioxide into organic molecule, which we refer as glucose. This is the overall structure of light-independent reaction, which we often call as Calvin cycle, or carbon fixation reaction. There's something called RUBP, but I'm pretty sure that this won't be coming out in test because it's really a minor idea. Also, the important part of this is identifying the electron carrier of photosynthesis. And for photosynthesis, the electron carrier is NADPH. Now let's dive in a little bit deeply about chloroplasts. So chloroplast is where the photosynthesis occurs. In chloroplast, there's something called thylakoid, and if the thylakoid are stacked up, they're called grana, and there's also something called stroma that is outside the thylakoid. Chloroplasts are double layer membrane, and they have inner membrane and outer membrane. We're gonna be more specific about chloroplasts later in the video. Now let's look at the factors that influence the rate of photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, there are 4 big factors that can influence the photosynthesis rate. The first one will be the light intensity, and the second one will be the CO2, and the third one will be temperature, and the fourth one will be the color of the light. Because chlorophyll is green, it does not absorb all wavelengths of visible light, and they reflect the green. And that's the reason why during the green and yellow period, the rate of the absorption of light goes low. And when it's violet to blue or red to orange color, the absorption of light goes extremely higher. If you look at the light intensity, when the light intensity reaches a certain level, the photosynthesis reaches the max efficiency and the rate stops to increase. It's same for H2O when it reaches the max efficiency, and it's a little bit different for temperature because, as I said in the previous videos, proteins usually denature when the temperatures are too high, and it's also same for the photosynthesis too. Once the temperature reaches the optimum temperature where the rate is the highest, the photosynthesis rate slowly decreases as the temperature goes up because extreme temperature can harm the protein and they can denature it, which will eventually lead to deceleration in chemical reaction rate. Let's talk a little bit specific about chlorophyll. So this is how chlorophyll looks like before getting the light. As I said in the light-dependent reaction, the chlorophyll in photosystem 2 absorbs the light. When the chlorophyll absorbs the light, it turns into excited state, and they emit heat and fluorescence, and they also deliver energy to the near chlorophyll. And when they once deliver the energy, then the chlorophyll right next to them will be excited state chlorophyll again, and the chlorophyll who donate the energy will turn into a regular chlorophyll. When we refer as antenna chlorophyll, it means the chlorophyll that transfer energy to reaction center. And the reaction center, they transfer electron to the acceptor, and they initiate photosynthetic electron transport chain. And finally, the NADP plus accepts the electron. Now let's talk about how they store their glucose. After the glucose are made, they usually store it as a starch because the forming of starch is forming the carbohydrate that will not cause H2O to enter by osmosis. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the rubisco that I said in the front. And rubisco is the one that binds with the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. And when they bind with the oxygen, the energy is lost and the carbon dioxide is released. This part is a little bit excessive information, so it's not that important, but you have to know what rubisco is. And when you study about rubisco, the most simple way to remember is that rubisco catalyzes the first step of the Calvin cycle. That's all you need to know. This is the summary table for the photosynthesis. It's really just the reactants, but it's good to memorize. And that was all for today. Thank you for listening, and next lesson I'll come back with cellular respiration. It's hard to pronounce, my bad. Well, have a great day, and see you next time.